What's good, y'all? I'm here with another video, and today we're gonna be reacting to Wrestling Premiere. It's heels in the 2000s were different. I grew up in wrestling, watching wrestling in the 2000s, 2010s type of situation. So I know about Orton, Edge, Triple H, Jericho, all of those. So definitely was some good times for sure. I don't know about the heels and all of that today. Like, wrestling just ain't the same, man. So I'm gonna just get into it, man, so I can have a nostalgia boost.
Triple H, 2000 to 2006. Triple H's reputation as the game had already made him one of the most notorious characters in WWE or WWF history. What made Triple H such a good heel was his attention to detail. Yes, at the end of the day, some people were fed up with his constant title reigns, but as a character, very few had the heel character down as well as the gamer. It was almost unfair. He already did a great job being the perpetrator of Austin getting run over and finding clever ways to steal the title, but 2000's Triple H had more in him, and this had to do with his positioning on the card. He was essentially the #1 guy in WWE at some points, and Triple H had a cool element to him, no doubt about it. It would become more apparent after the Reign of Terror era, but Triple H, he's one of the main reasons I made this video. This man was absolutely diabolical, plotted a return with his friend before stabbing him in the back, all to become his good buddy after he was attacked in the parking lot. He showed emotion and worry over his friend, but that quickly changed when he was revealed to be the perpetrator. Triple H already established himself as a heel, but they went the extra mile to make him even more detestable. Then he loses his match with HBK and takes him out with a sledgehammer. He's all bloodied up and 0 lessons learned. Okay, he hates HBK. Surely he doesn't continue this, right? Nope. This man played with a dead body at the funeral home. And it's strange saying it, let alone thinking of how WWE came up with this. Like, I'm kind of confused as to how did they come to terms that this is the story. It just sounds bizarre. I don't know, but Triple H continued. He turned racist for a month against Booker T, asking him for a towel to ride him in his limousine as a chauffeur. And it's almost a strange turn that his heel character took because the game wasn't known to be much of a racist beforehand. Even afterwards, with Evolution by his side, Triple H is big.
Booker T should have won that match at WrestleMania 19. I know everybody be saying that, but it's the goddamn truth. Another thing I want to say, early 2000s, Triple H had some good hair. No homo.
Behavior continued to develop. He put a bounty on Goldberg's head, which resulted in attempted murder, many attacks, and of course his ankle being shattered by Batista. It gave Triple H a different depth to the other heels in the sense of, hey, I'm not gonna try killing him myself, I have money for that. Other heels would do it themselves. So he was shown to have a much more calculated view of how to reach his goals. Eugene was hated by most of the heels on the roster. They didn't like him, didn't want anything to do with him, even Evolution. But Triple H found a way to use him, and it was all about the coveted World Heavyweight Championship. Since Eugene was a big fan of Triple H, even stunning The Rock in this revelation, the game became his friend. It's for ulterior motives, of course, because 2004 Triple H was more selfish than prime Kobe Bryant on the court, and the amount of effort put into this charade was ridiculous. He could have won the title himself, jumping in fun houses, making Eugene an honorary member of Evolution, and when this month-long plan didn't come together, he obliterated him and left him a bloody heap. One of the worst beatdowns Triple H put somebody through, and that's saying something. The game took out William Regal in his hotel room and had this huge sense of pride after committing these actions. Like, that image of Triple H standing in front of the mirror with a smile on his face is the perfect image to his heel run. A man who lacked morals, integrity, loyalty, and remorse. And this wasn't even the end of it. After Randy Orton did the one thing that Triple H couldn't, and that's beat Chris Benoit to become the World Heavyweight Champion, he took him out of the group, beat him senseless, and left him a bloody mess. Even then, he had expectations of Orton surrendering the belt and taking back his place as a member of Evolution, only for Orton to spit in his face and lose the belt afterwards. The game continued on as a regular heel. He finally did something huge by manipulating Batista into thinking JBL was out to get him, as this was a tactic to avoid the animal choosing his world title for a match at WrestleMania. It didn't work though. He lost the title. So Triple H resorted to making Batista think there was friction between himself and Ric Flair, so Batista could associate himself with the Nature Boy again. But this was an elaborate setup to annihilate Batista and challenge him to a Hell in a Cell match. He lost and disappeared for a bit. Upon his return the very first night, he almost killed Ric Flair out of pity. Triple H destroyed him with a sledgehammer, opened up his already fragile forehead, and threw him into the limo, all because he felt sad over what Flair had turned into. This version of Triple H was much more wiser. The other version had Evolution and often felt vulnerable without them despite his abilities and storyline. From here, he was a casual heel. He did some stuff, but it doesn't stand out. Most importantly, Triple H was much more cooler here. He stopped wearing the suits often, leaned towards the sunglasses and jeans, and because he was less often in the main event scene, fans started cheering him. And after WrestleMania 22, plans were in place for a DX return. Now, as a kid, my memories of Triple H as a heel are towards his late heel run. I didn't like him for basic reasons, but there was a coolness about him that very few had on Raw at the time. There was other heels I hated more. Kane's already been the most diabolical wrestler that WWE had seen, but he lost his touch, not to mention had been a face for about 2 years. His masked run had run its course in management's eyes, and there was only one way to go, unmasking him. and this resulted in Kane being his most dominant and most dangerous since 1998, I'd say. It really gives off shades of his run towards WrestleMania 14 in the sense of you didn't know what he would do on a weekly basis, and that's a very hard thing to do because
That's
number
true.
one, the fans have to be interested in the talent, and two, they have to have a certain legitness about them. Kane within his
I think with taking Kane's mask off was kind of a bigger risk for them than they probably thought it was. Don't get me wrong, like I understand that they probably thought the mask ran its course, but this was a big leap of faith for taking his mask off. It worked, but definitely was a risk.
first month tried to burn RVD, burned JR, tombstoned Linda McMahon, and chokeslammed Eric Bischoff off the stage. This guy was going all out and felt like a movie villain with the way they were booking him. Then proceeds to electrocute Shane's balls because, I don't know. He could have thrown him into the fire, returning the favor, but it was bizarre. This feud was very back and forth with this, but right afterwards he buried his own brother alive because he became one of the people. So he lost his edge. Kane's activities were mostly toned down until there was that story with Lita where he stalked her and she ended up pregnant. You fill in the dots. And ironically, this story was used as a catalyst to turn Kane face. WWE is smoking on the finest crack with this one. Like, how the f do you turn a vapist into a good guy in 3 months? But
No,
yeah,
literally.
Kane's heel run was like a bright star that quickly runs out. He reverted to being a face again from here right up until 2008. His heel run here wasn't much, other than of course him stalking Rey Mysterio and Kelly. He did kidnap Ranjin Singh, but this was nothing compared to 2003-04 Kane. Kurt Angle's wrestling ability had made him into a legend of the game already 4 years into his WWE run. We don't say that often. Once Angle reverted to being a heel in early 2004, his motives were deceiving as Angle had proclaimed himself to be an American hero and a role model for the kids to strive for. His actions contradicted every single claim he made. Why? First of all, Angle took up the role of SmackDown General Manager. His role is to be unbiased and provide opportunities, but instead, he turned the show upside down, made Eddie Guerrero's life a living hell, screwed John Cena out of the United States Championship over an accident, and of course his deep hatred for him. Angle was a fraud that posed as a noble man, and to top it all off, he cost Eddie Guerrero the title and in turn, exposed himself as healthy. But this was nothing. Angle from here on made demons look like angels. He shot Big Show with the tranquilizer dart and shaved his head, threatened Joy and eventually used her to get under Big Show's skin, and of course decimated Shawn Michaels just to challenge him to a match at WrestleMania 21.
That match at WrestleMania 21, top tier WrestleMania match. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it.
And the victory at the show should have mellowed him out, but no. This man turned into a predator to fulfill his fantasy.
Oh, yeah.
His rap said he wanted to have bestiality sex with Booker T's what? This man lost applause long ago, but it was a weird time. It was a weird time for Kurt Angle, and this was all done just so the fans couldn't cheer him. Because somebody with Kurt Angle's abilities, heel or face, is gonna be loved. He goes to Raw, curses out the troops, and in an effort to show that he could get cheered, said he's not a fan of the black people. That's literally how he said it. It was crazy what they were doing with him, because if they let go just a little, he was gonna get cheered. But yeah, Kurt Angle is one of the most insane heels from this era of WWE, and that's saying something. This guy was a predator. He was a detestable human being, everything, and they did all of this just to get him booed. It was so tough for Kurt Angle. Bradshaw's career trajectory is a very strange one. A singles wrestler doing nothing ends up being paired with Ron Simmons to become one of the most entertaining tag teams of the Attitude Era. His time runs out and it seems like he's heading towards retirement, but a huge opportunity opens with the departure of Brock Lesnar and the injuries to the likes of The Big Show and Kurt Angle. Enter JBL. JBL was an extension of Bradshaw's real life. He was an investor, a successful one at that, and WWE constructed a new character for him relating to that. John Bradshaw Layfield was his new name. A successful businessman who left Texas for New York City and in turn became the very thing that his old character, the APA, would despise. A suit-wearing egomaniac who loved hearing the sound of his voice. And compared to other heels, JBL wasn't as diabolical or flat-out evil. He was more grounded, and his immoral actions had this cleanness to them compared to the likes of Triple H and Kurt Angle. It was a standout character trait and showed that even his actions in the squared circle were white-collar. Yes, he attacked his opponents, but he never usually left them bloody. He went to the U.S.-Mexico border and went after some immigrants hopping the border. It's almost a crazy segment now. You wouldn't see this on national TV, but WWE in 2004 was wild. The Undertaker was a tough opponent, so he enlisted the help of Gangrel and Viscera, and his cabinet cleaned up any problems that came his way. The real standout to JBL as a heel were his promos. He had this unusual contempt for the crowd and guys like John Cena and Rey Mysterio that you almost believe it's real. This man didn't have a single t-shirt. Now, I don't think anyone would have bought a JBL shirt anyways, but it goes to show that he was dedicated to simply being hated. No flashes of, hey, he's pretty cool. Just business and pure hatred. I hated JBL. This man was so unlikable. He would always pop up when you least expect it. He had a big problem with the country of Mexico, and that would show in his feuds with Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio. This man told Rey straight to his face, you're not a dog, You're a Mexican. Brought out Kane on May 19th of all days to face Rey Mysterio, and once he quit, he went to commentary where he'd endlessly bully other wrestlers. Upon his return to the squared circle, he was still the same guy. Forced Shawn Michaels to become his assistant and made his life a living hell before retiring. JBL was committed to the job. He had an old school vibe to him in the sense of do whatever it takes to be hated, and he went the extra mile every single time because that was his job. Nobody ever said JBL was cool. Yeah, he was cool in 2001, but as his cowboy hat suit wearing almost politician figure, nobody said that. Edge's injury in 2003 changed the trajectory of his career entirely. Without that injury, a lot would be different. Not only in Edge's career, but the entire complexion of WWE. He came back significantly different and didn't have much support from the crowd. He lacked that fire he had in 2002, not to mention it was much slower in ring. So something had to give. And right when he turned heel, there was the whole lead on Matt Hardy situation, which gave him a lot of heat and hatred from the fans. And in turn, he used this fire to build momentum and become the Rated R Superstar. As the Rated R Superstar, Edge saw no boundary he'd pass if it would give him the WWE Championship. He didn't care what others thought. Lita, he'd pander to anybody if they could help him as a mere tag team partner. Snitsky, Big Show, even Vince. It was crazy. And what's even crazier is that this was the early parts to Rated R Edge. This character would develop more.
Hey, no BS though. Edge one of the best heels of all time. Damn near top 5. Damn near top 3. He my number 2. Randy Orton number 1, but he my number 2. Bro was devious. No bullshit.
And turned into the most intelligent wrestler in the entire WWE. Edge was banging Lita in the middle of the ring, destroying his opponents with a concerto. There was this pinfall, slapped John Cena's dad in his own house, and he'd bend the rules like no other person in this video. DQs to save the title. Brass Knuckles even claimed that he didn't want to wrestle in Arizona because they were the last state to recognize Martin Luther King Day. This man was world class in excuses. He convinced Mr. Kennedy to put his money in the bank briefcase on the line, not knowing wants to come, which was a cheap shot, a cheap attack, and he's the holder of the briefcase. Makes good on the opportunity to become the champion on SmackDown. Edge found a lot of comfort as the champion on SmackDown as he managed to get with Vicky Guerrero and even married her, all for his own interest. This guy would pull out some bizarre thing and always end up on top. He returns and gets a title shot during a title match and it works in his favor. Why? Because he's Edge, the ultimate opportunist. My most hated heel. This man ruined John Cena's life, cashed in on The Undertaker, and continuously screwed Batista out of the title. And once he saw this Vicky Guerrero thing growing thin, he divorced her and said he never liked her. Ironically, this was the most cheered he had been in about 5 years. There's very few that match Edge as a heel. He was probably the coolest out of all these guys because of his style and vibe, which should work against him, of course. But he made it work because he had plenty of inspiration from the likes of Roddy Piper, the Matt Hardy incident, and the booking. He was always a coward that relied on unethical means to win the title. Hell, this man found 2 lookalikes to help him distract The Undertaker and Batista just to win the title. This guy was reaching towards the stars just to find any single way to win that title. It was crazy. Randy Orton had the perfect baseline for it. He was a second-generation wrestler who felt entitled due to his father's success and, of course, his inclusion in the Evolution faction. Orton had the heel look down, a young talent who thought the world was his, and Orton did plenty. He disrespected legends such as Mick Foley, Harley Race, and even RKO'd the Fabulous Moolah. He had a hidden type of craziness that would unravel as the years would.
Not gonna lie, this picture is hard. It's one of Randy's hardest pictures. No bullshit. That's one of his hardest pictures.
Go by. It wasn't until he reverted in 2005 that things would change. For one, he RKO'd Stacy Keibler in order to focus on his match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and his feud with the Dead Man forced him to reveal his true nature, that of a pure psychopath. He burned a casket with the Dead Man in it, and upon his return proceeded to drive a lowrider in reverse and cause an explosion. That didn't work, and after the humbling inside Hell in a Cell, Orton moved on to business like nothing happened. He tried to smear Eddie Guerrero's legacy saying he's in hell, rode his lowrider, and screwed Ray out of his title shot at WrestleMania. But all this was nothing compared to the next couple of years. Ray and RKO as a tag team had some diabolical moments. They basically killed Ric Flair here and took him out with a concerto, did it to DX, but once they went their separate ways, Randy Orton became even more cold and calculating. He brought out the punt, used it to take out plenty of wrestlers, even John Cena's dad, and Orton needed this edge to finally get his hands on the WWE Championship, but keeping it required him to be persistent with this newfound attitude, and he learned the hard way. So upon his return from injury, a big emphasis was made on Orton's unstable side. He punted Mr. McMahon after having an argument with Stephanie, and from there, unhinged Randy Orton was here. He always showed remorse over his actions initially, but that would change. He did things with intent, such as DDTing Stephanie and kissing her in front of Triple H, taking him and Batista out with the punt, and then of course he had the bald look, which fit him well. He was having problems mentally, hearing voices, and he'd lash out on the likes of John Cena. This man was tortured and...
Bro, 09, 08, 09 Orton, Skinhead Orton is... Bro. Skinhead Orton, one of the best heels in WWE, if not the best heel in WWE. Bro, he did whatever it took, bro. And even more, like, he was just devious, bro. Too devious.
Insane. Attempted murder with a pyro. Hell, this man would go after his own guys every once in a while. The Viper Randy Orton was the most cold and frightening character of this time period because of how unpredictable he was. And Orton made it work. He had the talent to make this character a success, and one thing to know is that he had such great acting skills at this point. He just knew how to do the things he was doing and when to do them. It was crazy.
It's kind
of funny how Mr. McMahon was low-key the most talented heel in the entire WWF. The reason why I say low-key is because he was hidden in plain sight. McMahon added a lot to the shows with his character, and throughout the 2000s he showed why. At one point, this man was cheered on Raw and hated on SmackDown like he was the Antichrist. He was constantly provoking Hulk Hogan and fired him all because of his personal animosity towards him. Started having problems with his daughter Stephanie over the show, wanted to see Zach Gowen fail and use his prosthetic leg and made a mockery out of it. Used Brock Lesnar and A-Trade to attack his daughter, and to top it all off, he had a match with her and no mercy. Knew that his soul was destined for hell and started telling tales of his demise ahead of his Buried Alive match with The Undertaker. That didn't happen though, and McMahon disappeared. He wasn't really involved with storylines until the end of 2005 when he targeted Shawn Michaels, all for telling him to move on from Montreal. And this man was pressing him like, why don't you go back to the old days, the days of drugs and sex? I'm changed. Oh, well, you'll enter the Royal Rumble, but only if you beat insert name. Tried to force him to retire, drugged his drink and made him take a drug test, which flipped on its head, went to church and tried to find his own religion, made a match with God as Shawn Michaels' tag team partner, won that match and started annoying Triple H and didn't want anything to do with him, and this led to the return of DX, which drove McMahon crazy. 3 months of hell. Sure, he had the upper hand at some points, but by the end of it, he realized it wasn't worth dealing with DX. After his embarrassment at WrestleMania 23, this led to a change of appearance from McMahon. He sported a do-rag and started annoying Bobby Lashley, and it was more comedy rather than some big bad heel type of storyline. It slowly led to the end of the Mr. McMahon character. Not to mention, it wasn't as insane as he used to be. CM Punk signing with WWE caught some people off guard. An indie talent being scooped up by the biggest company around, and it's not like they didn't do this, it's just Punk's circumstances were significantly different than others like Paul London and Brian Kendrick. Punk's initial days in the WWE were as a face. It wasn't until 2009 that he took the role of a heel. Punk was the direct opposite of what Jeff Hardy was all about, and it wasn't even hard for him to get booed. It's Jeff Hardy in the year of 2009. 2009 Jeff Hardy is like 2009 Lil Wayne. This guy was number one, but despite this, the Second City Saint went off the deep end with this new heel character and was so desperate to not only be hated, but to be considered the devil of WWE. Because of how much love Jeff Hardy had at the time and his own touch, it stood out. He was snarky, held himself to a higher esteem than the fans, and the difference to Punk with other heels was that he wouldn't be like, you guys are nothing. He would go on about personal life choices such as being sober, and these rants got him even more heat. Best of all, he got rid of Jeff Hardy and dropped him with the belt after his goodbye speech. This man was absolute heat, even disguised himself as Hardy the following week, devastating some of the fans. Punk's status on the card fell a bit, but it allowed him to create what was known as the Straight Edge Society. Members had to completely devote themselves to Punk and abstain from drugs and alcohol. Punk had some heat, but the whole thing never developed to a story that would rival his feud with Jeff Hardy. I always thought there was a potential world title story there, but it is what it is. Luke Gallows, Serena shaved their heads, and Punk was all enjoying himself, growing this big beard. He felt like he was almost a messiah-like figure. The Straight Edge Society helped CM Punk become one of the most hated men on SmackDown, but once he caught momentum with it, it was quickly taken out and disbanded. Punk didn't really have a long heel run in the 2000s, but in the small time he was given, he made the most out of it. So that's why I decided to include him here, because this man, for literally 3 months, pissed off every Jeff Hardy fan on earth. They just hated him. Chris Jericho's heel character in WWE had never been fleshed out properly. Early on, he was one of those mid-card heels, but because he was pretty popular, they turned him into a face. King of My World Jericho was a regular heel. He didn't do something that was too heinous, basic heels.
Hey, King of My World, top tier Chris Jericho song. If you haven't heard it, go listen to it.
He was leaning towards comedy at times. 2005 had some moments where he was brutal with John Cena, but his real standout was 2008. Jericho transformed himself into a very composed and calm heel. He stood out easily because, for one, he shed any mention of his Y2J persona and re-established himself despite not needing to. He needed to, though, because it was the only way he touched the main event scene. Chris Jericho was the deepest heel out there, and WWE knew this. He wasn't the most violent or cruel, but he stood out because technically everything he was saying was true. It's just he was the wrong messenger. Jericho, compared to the rest here, looks pretty clean. I added him here because he was the most unique and had a big interest in remaining in character outside the arena. You ask most people, the best character of WWE in 2008, or the best heel, they're gonna say Chris Jericho. He just did some amazing work that year.
Probably some
In
of his
09,
best
he
work.
was great as well. 2010 and onwards. And he was right most of the time, but just because he was a heel, that made him wrong. Now, these guys weren't mentioned outright, but their actions certainly stood out. Heidenreich tried to destroy The Undertaker, crashing a car into him. That whole Michael Cole incident, which was crazy. Sean O'Haire was very different to others because instead of doing these actions, he led others to that direction. Big Show swung a stretcher, bound Rey Mysterio. Jesus stabbed John Cena on a club and stole his chain. And there's plenty of examples out there. I didn't want to talk about comedy heels here as well because I just didn't think it was their place. King Booker, he was very entertaining, but he didn't fit the video much. Shawn Michaels' return in 2002 as a proud babyface made things seem unlikely for a potential heel turn. He came in as a heel with the NWO, but it was nothing compared to his old days. 2005, though, opened things up. Michaels took up the role of a villain for his feud with Hulk Hogan, and man, oh man, this man was still as amazing as he once was. 1 month, he was a heel for only 1 month, yet people are still talking about it. Because HBK was making jokes about Hulk Hogan, mocking him, and even trolled the Montreal crowd into thinking Bret Hart was coming back. This guy had no chill, and it's crazy, 1 month, but he made the most out of it. It's kind of unfortunate that HBK never continued being a heel from here on because he clearly showed that he still had the ability for it. But regardless, at the end of the day, this was a very memorable run. It certainly stands out, especially for a short run. Alright, these are the heels of the 2000s. A lot of these guys were absolutely insane. The way they booked them was crazy, and this was all just to prevent some cheering. They wanted these guys to be booed 99% of the time. The best heel out of all these guys, I'd say, is Triple H. I think Triple H was the best booked as a character, not the stories or whatever. I'm talking about his character, his heel persona. The way he was booked was almost a TV show character. He had the most background as well. You know, he was a part of the Clique, DX, and whatnot, and he managed to make something out of himself. But other than that, all these guys did their job well. They were amazing. Some of these guys would be doing some stuff you would not see today at all. You would not see this stuff at all. Alright, what did you guys think of the heels of the 2000s? Please comment down below, and that's the first video. Make sure you...
Alright, y'all, that's the end of the video, man. Make sure y'all like, subscribe. This was a good video, man. A lot of these heels I remember. And, man, it was just good times, bro. Like, I just remember watching and just seeing it happen in real time. You just had to be there. But, yeah, man, I'm out, man.